In this video, we're going to talk about guitar gear that every player needs. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Cliffhanger, and I'm here with my friend Jason Stallworth. Thanks for having me over, dude. We're going to be talking about some gear that we have been talking about. Gear that we highly recommend for beginning guitar players. Things that we would consider almost necessities. Even though not all of the items on this list might be, I think that they are definitely worth discussing as a guitar player because they have all come in handy at some point. What do you think?
And I would say even if you're not a beginner, if you've been playing for a while, still hang around because the stuff we're going to go through is just music gear and it's stuff that we like to see and talk about.
Absolutely. Otherwise, we wouldn't recommend it. Of course, you're going to need a guitar. Duh, that's obvious. If you haven't gotten that far, then, well, we should probably start with that. The next thing I recommend is getting a gig bag for your instrument. This will keep it safe and allow you to move around easily. Jason, you use a gig bag or do you use a hard shell case?
There are some guitars, if you purchase them new, they come with a hard shell case, or if you buy them at a store, they may give you a discount on hard shell. So I think I prefer that for the electrics. But then again, the way they're making gig bags these days, I mean, they're pretty sturdy. So like the gig bag that came with my Martin guitar, I mean, that thing is nice and sturdy and protects. It's all about protecting your instrument.
One of the things I like about the gig bags nowadays, like the Martin here, is it's got this compartment space here. Yeah. So you could put your books, music sheets, picks, tuners, cables, anything extra that you might need right in here. And of course, it's got a backpack strap. So you can just kind of put it over your bag or your backpack. Use it as a backpack and then, take it to a gig. Pretty much a must-have.
The hard shell cases, okay, that's good if you're traveling or if you're gigging with like a rock or metal band or something like that and you're moving stuff around a lot. Maybe a hard shell case is what you want. I play a lot of live solo shows and that gig bag works just fine. The gig bags are a lot lighter. And of course, if you're just starting out, you're just playing in your room and practicing, a gig bag is gonna serve your purpose.
Absolutely. The next thing that I'm gonna recommend is getting a guitar tuner. It is a must-have because you can't play guitar if it's not in tune. The one that Jason's holding here is a Snark tuner. It's probably the #1 most sold tuner of all time. You can get them pretty much at any guitar retailer. And I have this one, which is a personal favorite. This is the Dario tuners. And I was just turned on to these, and I think that they are very, very accurate and read the tuning very well. We'll be able to pick up whatever pitch that you're in pretty much immediately, and they're colorful.
If you're going to play tunes, you've got to be in tune, right?
There you go.
Now, if you happen to forget a tuner, which you won't because you're watching Cliff's video here, you can also just type in online guitar tuner, Google that, and you'll get a tuner online. So, that's another way to tune your guitar as well.
How did I forget that, man?
I don't know, man.
Okay, guys, the next thing is a guitar amp. As a guitar player, especially an electric player, you're gonna want to have a guitar amp. Yes. Because what's the point of having all the electricals with no horsepower, you know what I'm saying?
You've got to hear, and in many cases, you want to feel the sound, and that's why we're talking about amps.
There are so many different versatile amps out there, from really clean amps like a Fender amp all the way up to Eddie Van Halen amps or Blackstar amps for those of us who love rock and metal.
Now, of course, we showcase the Blackstar HT Venue MK3 amplifier. That's a half stack. Now, this particular amp, like many modern amps, there's usually a wattage setting. So, for example, this goes from 100 to 10 watts. So you can get a really nice sound putting that on the 10-watt setting at a lower volume. Now, of course, there's also amps with effects and all that stuff like the Boss Katana and there's several options out there these days.
So if you're just a bedroom player, I highly recommend a lower wattage setting from 0.5 watt to maybe a 10 watt. That's really all you're gonna need unless you want the neighbors to rock out too.
And that's okay too.
The next must-have that every guitar player should have, pedals.
Pedals.
Let's talk about tone, baby. This one right here is an overdrive pedal. It's one of my favorite ones. You can check that out in this video up here. And this is the Silver Archer. It's a Klon copy. It's a great overdrive. If you're looking for a boost or a gain overdrive, this can really take your sound to the next level. Now, if you're looking for a fuzz, which would be like this, it can give you more of a gritty old school sound. It's also a favorite among many guitar players.
And of course, if you're playing through a metal amp that's got a really good distortion, but you just want to tighten things up a little bit, which is very common in the heavier genres of metal, you might just want a simple overdrive pedal and just turn the overdrive all the way down and the output all the way up, and that will tighten things up for your amplifier.
Yeah, that's super solid advice. Other pedals that you should be definitely looking into are reverbs and delay pedals, or any modulation pedals, but especially reverbs and delays, as they can add weight and dimension to your tone.
Those are my personal favorites, just those two alone. A good solid distortion with some reverb, and I love delays when you're starting to play guitar solos. It just makes everything, in my opinion, just sound so much better, so much more inspiring to play.
Yeah, it can really make you sound like a rock god.
Of course, there are other pedals that you can get, and of course, we talked about some amplifiers that have the built-in effects with them. But Cliff, in my opinion, I think having just a solid amplifier with some pedals, with some, physical single pedals, may sound a little bit better and more inspiring to play than an amplifier that has all the effects built in. What do you think, man?
I would agree 100%, and the reason is because you can kind of hone in on your own tonality that you're looking for versus what's already designed on an amp.
Now, I guess with that, you want something to put your pedals on. Let's say you just dive deep into all these pedals, and you've got an overdrive, you got a noise gate, you got delay, reverb, chorus, all this other stuff. Well,
you need a place to store it, like a pedal board. So this is the case, and this is the pedal board. The pedal board can hold all of your pedals in a nice, neat fashion, allowing you to wire them up and just make it seamless. You can also put your power supply underneath your pedal board, allowing for neat and clean power to your pedals.
Yeah, that way you don't have to have all these different outlets for each and every pedal. They go right into the power supply, and those again stick right underneath the pedal board. One outlet, that's it.
That's it. And an organized pedal board is a professional pedal board. Now we're going to talk about cables. Now there are different variations of cables. You can get an ultra cheap cable with a ultra cheap connector and cheap wiring and cheap shielding, and it's not gonna sound the best. It'll get the job done, but it may be noisy. I would recommend something like a braided cable here with a little bit of a better connector, or even the Megami, which are my all-time favorites. Now, of course, they're the most expensive cable, but these have the silent ends, so when you unplug them, they don't make a farting noise and coming through the PA, and it's not gonna sound great. This is a silent cable. This sounds absolutely awesome, and I highly recommend them.
And that's perfect if you happen to play live. And even as a beginner, hey, we want to encourage you to get out there, go to some open mics and plug in and just start playing live. That builds an entirely different skill set, by the way. But this cable will be perfect for that if you have to change guitars or something like that. So yeah.
Quickly, we'll also talk about patch cables, little tiny baby cables, and these will go on your pedal board, and they will wire up two pedals, and this keeps it nice and tight and easy, so you don't have to have like a 30-foot cable going in between each pedal, because that would be bad.
It would be bad.
Last cable we're going to talk about in this video is the speaker cable. This goes from a head of an amp to a cabinet that holds your speakers, and it is a balanced connection so that you don't get any noise or hum. It's also a must-have if you have an amp head with a cabinet.
And by the way, this is not an instrument cable. This is different, right? So there's a different cable for your guitar going into your amp, and of course into your pedals, the 1/4-inch cables. Even though this looks like a 1/4-inch cable, and by size, yes it is, this is specific for the amplifier and the speaker. Now, of course, if you buy something like a combo amp where you've got the amp head and the speakers all in one, obviously you don't need that cable, and it should come with an amp if you have the amp head and the cabinet separate, right? Like a 112 or a 212. And real quick, I guess the cool thing about that, about buying the head and cab separate, well, you can buy another cab later down the road and play it with that amp head, because I think a lot of the tones come from the speaker in the cabinet, right?
Absolutely. The speaker itself has its own sound, so it's fun to experiment with the different sounds that you can achieve. Here's some other honorable mentions that we highly recommend you have as a guitar player. An extra pack of strings. Seriously, you're going to pop a string when you don't want to pop a string, so you got to have a backup. Highly recommend them. Has that ever happened to you, dude?
It has. Rarely has it happened on stage. Now, I'm not sponsored by the company, but I use these strings right here for acoustic and electric, and that's Elixirs. I change strings probably every 2 or 3 months, and again, I play live music several times a week. There's a little coating on there, so if you like coated strings, that's an option. Of course, not everyone likes coated strings, so if you want just traditional strings, of course, you can go with whatever brand.
You should also have at least 40 to 50 picks in your backpack at all time. No, seriously, I probably have like 40 or 50 picks in my backpack at all time. It's
Half of them are
ridiculous.
probably in the dryer, though, right? Because, you know,
Yes.
picks always come out of the dryer.
If you're constantly losing your picks, check your dryer or underneath your couch cushions. That's likely where they went to. But there's nothing worse than showing up to a gig or to a rehearsal and realizing that you forgot your pick.
I've got a tiny little case that I put picks in, and it's in one of my gig bags when I play live. I also have, as you can see, several picks here in the studio. So anywhere I'm going to be playing, whether it's here or there, I've always got the picks readily available.
I'm also going to recommend one extra universal power cable. That's the cable that plugs into your amp and into the wall, because if you were to forget your power, well, at least you would have a backup, and that way you can still play your show.
It's always smart to have a backup, especially when you're playing live. And again, as a beginner, you might not quite be thinking about that yet, but hopefully you are. But at some point, you may step on a stage of some kind, and you want to have a backup of everything.
Jason, thank you so much for being a part of this video with me and having this discussion on guitar gear that every player must have.
These videos are cool. They're fun to do, man, and thank you for coming over. I think we're going to jam some after we eat some lunch, right?
Yeah, that's right. So guys, if you got anything out of this video, please consider thumbing up the video and subscribing to my channel. And earlier we were playing this E2, this 7th string that he's got over there. It's an ESP. If you want to know more info or more facts on that company, be sure to check out this video. We're also playing a Telecaster. If you want to know more info or facts about Fender, be sure to check out this video right here. See you over there.